welcome back to the Meadowbank Thistle Podcast. We've been away for a while, but the work hasn't stopped. I've had quite a bit on my plate, which has come ahead of this project. But once the football season is out of the way, I hope that David Baxter and I will be able to provide a comprehensive update on our book project. But I'll keep my lips sealed on that front just for now. Today, I have a guest who's probably not one of the first names on the Meadowbank Thistle team sheet. But he is a fascinating character who has some great stories about his time with Meadowbank and beyond. Hugh McGauran made 23 appearances for Thistle across the 78-79 and 79-80 seasons under Willie McFarlane, and played in probably the biggest games the club had faced up to that point. He also played in Hong Kong for two different teams in two different spells before working in youth football for both Celtic and Hearts. Watch out for some of the name drops. More recently, Hugh has written a book which he'll tell us all about shortly. Let's get on with the show.
So, welcome to the Meadowbank Thistle Podcast, Hugh McGauran.
Thank you.
So, I'll get started the same way as I do with everybody. Tell me about your childhood. How did you get into football?
Childhood, 6-year-old, scarf on, Hibs hat on, for Leith, Banana Flats, but it was before the Banana Flats. Up to see my granddad, we're going to the first football match, 1964, up to Easter Road, under the big floodlights, seeing the team in green and white hoops. Hibs get beat 4-0 off Celtic. I get home and I say to my dad, I want to be a Celtic supporter. And I think he probably broke his heart. But to be fair to him, for the next 5 years, he took me everywhere to see the Celtic between the ages of 6 and 12. And it was probably the greatest period in the history of Celtic Football Club. And that gave me a love for the game and a passion to enjoy football like that Celtic squad did and play. My first European match was Vojvodina. And then, as I say, I went to Milan for the European Cup final in 1969. First time I was ever on a plane. I was at Ellen Road in 69 for a European semi-final. Football was there for an early day. I even thought Santa Claus was a football fan because all I ever got was football boots, football scarves and football pennants. And so my life was basically football from a very, very early age. And then I got into playing. And in the days, you only played school football. So I played for my local primary school team. And a lot of good players in the Granton area. Played for Leith Primary School Select. And then my dad was sort of a pioneer of youth football. In the days, you didn't play youth football till you were 15 on a Saturday. All the big clubs, Elvison, Tynecastle, my club was Royston Boys. That's where I was brought up. They never had youth teams till under 15. So you basically only played primary school football and maybe the BBs. And my dad was going round watching all these great players at 11 and 12, waiting till they get to 15 to represent the big club. So he formed a wee breakaway league on a Sunday. And from that league came players like Gordon Strachan and Alexis Shields, a lot of good players from the area. The big clubs cottoned on to that. It was probably because the Kirk actually didn't let you play on a Sunday and there were no football allowed to be played in public parks. And I will never forget my first game. My dad would referee one half, the opponents would referee the other half. We actually changed in my living room. A full team with Coventry City strips on. We ran in a house in Royston Mains, round to the public park, played the first half against another team from Drylaw. The park patrol came, stopped the game, told us to go away. We pretended we were going away. We played the second half. But it cottoned on for there. And from that league, the other clubs at under 13 thought we better go down and start giving kids a game. So then I played with my Royston Boys team, and that was my dream. It's funny, you have a dream to be a professional footballer, but my first dream as a little boy, the boys club was just round the corner from me. And as a junior member, I was there morning, noon and night playing five-a-sides, kicking the ball, table tennis, and you wanted to play for your Royston Boys team, and that eventually happened when it got brought down to under 13s. And I wouldn't leave Royston. I played right through my juvenile days with Royston Boys Club. We were an institution to the area, but we're also a very good team. We represented Edinburgh in the first ever European tournament in Glasgow. They tried to put on a tournament, Celtic Boys Club. Tommy Burns played in it, Roy Aitken played in it, George McCluskey played in it. And we done well as a as an Edinburgh representative. So that was my first introduction to playing against European teams that were at the event, and we played against Manchester United, the Wolves, and things like that. So it was just a love for football, and it was probably through my dad's love for football too and his influence that got me right into enjoying the game. Royston Boys Club were a great club. We had a record-breaking under-8. I was only 15, but I got called up to this team. The team had 3 Meadowbank players eventually: Derek Father-in-arm, Tom O'Rourke and Roy Jones, who left. He was a Granton lad, and Roy went to Australia to play. We also had on that side Kenny Dargo, who went full-time with the Hibs, and 2 guys that never made it big in senior football, but the goalkeeper was Davy Gordon and his son was Craig Gordon, who went on to play for Hearts, and the other...
Still playing?
He's still playing, yeah. And the other player was Peter Gray, was a left back, and his son David is now manager of Hibs. Between Davy being the goalie and Peter being the left back, we've now got the Hearts goalkeeper and the Hibs manager's son's playing. And because I played with both these guys, when I went to work with Hearts, I ended up taking both these kids into Hearts at 11-year-olds. It's just a football link that was always there. But that all started at Royston Boys Club, and that was the club that I always played for. Despite getting asked to play for the Salmersons, the Tynecastles and the Hutchie Vales, I wanted to represent my area and enjoyed playing for Royston. And luckily in the days they were a good club. Sadly the club's burnt to the ground now, and Spartans are the new club of the area, and that's the community club now in the Greater Pilton area. So that was my introduction to football. That was my love for football, and it's still going strong.
So when you moved into the senior ranks, I read that you were involved with Newcastle and Carlisle south of the border.
Yeah, well, when I was playing juvenile football, because we were a good team, there were always scouts at the matches, and there were always people asking you to go down for trials. I had been to Arsenal, I had been to Newcastle, and Aston Villa. But while I was at Newcastle, I got a bit of advice that was probably the best advice you could ever get, and what I kept with me all my life when I coached in youth development. As a Newcastle guy told me straight away, we'll take 18 apprentices, and if 2 go beyond the reserves and 1 makes the first team, we call that a major achievement. It showed you how hard it is to be a full-time footballer. So we actually played Carlisle in a game. Over that period, I was down on trial and things, and I done well against them. And the guy asked me, "You signed for Newcastle?" And I said, "No, not yet. I've been down for a month training." And he said, "How would you like to come to Carlisle? We've only got 18 players, and you'll train with the first team, and you'll feel part of the group." So that was more appealing for me. They had just been relegated from the old English First Division, so they weren't a bad side. They had John Gorman. We went on to Tottenham Hotspur, and Billy Rafferty played there, Phil Bonneman. They had a big Scottish contingent, and assistant manager was a guy, Hugh O'Neill, and he played there. He was a Scotsman. It was easy for me to go there too, because it was only really 80 minutes up the road, and you could get back and forward quick. So I went down there and I enjoyed it. I was playing down there that season, and then I came home and I got a mad moment. Somebody asked me if I fancied going to Hong Kong.
Yes. Tell me about the first time you met Willie McFarlane.
Well, that wasn't Willie. The first time.
Oh, okay.
No, what happened is I could have went down to Carlisle again, but somebody offered me a chance to go to Hong Kong, and I got the promise, we'll be playing in front of 30,000 crowds, and you'll get tax-free, and you'll get this, and and at that time as a young guy, it mightn't have been the real projection that you should have went on. You probably should have stayed in England and tried to progress. And when you went to somewhere like the Far East, it probably was out of sight, out of mind as a younger player. But I loved it, and I went over and I played that season with Hong Kong Rangers. Having only been on a plane for a second time in my life, going away to the other side of the world. We never even had a telephone in our house. So the only way we could... I laugh now when my nieces and family say things like, what was it like in Hong Kong? And how you've got Skype and you've got... I had nothing. It was actually one phone call to my aunt maybe every 6 months. And that's how I lived. I loved it there because it was fun football, and it was warm, and it really made me lean. I actually got much fitter over there because everything was sharp and fast. So when I came home, the only problem about it is, and I don't know if you've heard in general, but they're the worst players in the world. And you go chasing money all the time. You never get your wages. They had They had a reputation. I never knew when I went, but they had a reputation. Willie Henderson, Alec Forrest, Jim Willoughby, all Rangers players, and that was the link to Hong Kong Rangers. Initially set up bringing Scottish ex-Rangers players over to boost football in Hong Kong. But what I never knew is they all got bumped out their money. So every month players would be looking for this owner come manager who was a Scotsman, and he was always like, what to give you half your wages, or sometimes when he had no money, quarter your wages. But you never knew at that time that everything really survived on how good your crowd was. So if you were not playing well and you were only getting 3,000 instead of the promised 1,000, you never had the money to pay people. So you learned to understand it. But it was a nice way of life, and I really enjoyed it. And it was an education for me.
Did they sort out your accommodation and travel?
So they pay for all that. So at least you had a place to live. You always got a taxi to your training. So you were never, you were never desperate for anything. You weren't going to build a future there. You were just going to constantly chase money. But then I came home and I started playing with the strollers just for fun. I got the bug. I enjoyed travelling. I thought it was really great being abroad. And I knew if I played amateur at the strollers or didn't sign a contract, that if I wanted to just go away and try somewhere like Canada or America, I could just go. But I stayed strollers with a few of my juvenile friends all playing in the team, and we were quite a young side, and I really enjoyed it. And I played centre mid there, and I could kick with both feet, I thought, and I rattled about 20 odd goals in that season for the strollers. We played City. The City Cup was Meadowbank versus Strollers, and in the game, Wally was manager of Meadowbank, and I had a good game, and he asked me after the game if I would go out and play the following week against Dunfermline, and that as a trialist, and that was a game that was at Bayview because there was something up with. So I played in the game, and he must have liked me, and he asked me if I would sign and play at Meadowbank the following season, which was great, and I didn't mind doing it.
I'll just interject there that you mentioned the game was played at Bayview.
Yeah.
And this becomes a theme of playing for Meadowbank in a home game, but not at Meadowbank.
Yeah.
For added context for the listener, it was 21st of April 1979. The grass was being reseeded at Meadowbank. Usually it's a cat show or a beer festival, but yeah, the grass was being reseeded.
Flower show.
Was it odd playing in a home game at a totally alien venue?
That was just a trialist, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to play football and enjoy it. I done that, and then I was happy that he asked me to sign. My dad was happy because he was a Hibby, and to be honest, Wally was part of that famous 5 Hibs side, and it was probably the most successful Hibs side in history, really, because they're the only team I think outside the Old Firm that's won the league 2 years running. The Hibs were a big club in the 50s. Wally was a character in terms of being a Hibs player. So for me, it was nice to go and get some recognition for a Hibernian footballer. Come now manager. So I was happy to go there. And to be fair to Wally, I actually think that side that I played the trial in, the Hancock brothers and David McKenzie and these type of guys, and a few maybe guys I didn't know, they might have been coming for anti-thistle type into that group and age. And Wally really injected that squad that I joined with a right young squad. He had Gordon Fraser, Davy Coyroy, that were just basically 18. He had myself, Joe Forte, Brian Ross. We all played youth football. We were all under 20. And he had Jobby. Jobby was probably one of the oldest in the new group. And Watty Boyd. You had Derek Nielsen on goals on loan for Dundee United, who was quite a young guy. And I think the boy Derek Brown. That nucleus of a squad. And then when you had Mark Leeson was the captain, I think Mark might have only been about 25. It was probably the youngest squad Meadowbank you ever had, and you had people like Kenny Davison and Tom Downey, which was quite funny because when I went down to Meadowbank and Tom was there, Tom had been my lecturer at the college. Tommy Downey he worked at Telford College at the time as a lecturer for building and plastering and things like that. When we were at school, we'd get sent over to the college, and Tom was one of the teachers there. But I think he was a Rangers player at that time. He had played with the Rangers.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be very often that somebody comes on this podcast and says, I went into the changing room and my teacher was there, and it's not Terry Christie.
I know. And the thing is, Terry ended up headmaster at my old school, but when I was well gone. So that was it. Yeah. And it was good. There were a freshness about Meadowbank at that season, the pre-season. Everybody was fit and working well. So I was actually looking forward to the the season ahead. And I actually started okay. We played Barrow in our pre-season and I got a goal in that first home game. I quite liked the fact it was a nice big pitch because you could get away from people. And I started in the team and getting a game, and then up at Brecon I got a bad Achilles injury. I think it was about end of September, mid-September. And I think that put me out for about 6 or 7, maybe 8 weeks. I remember me not coming back until about mid-November, late November. And it's strange, I always remember the game because it was probably, and it's daft, but it was my favourite game for Meadowbank and probably the best game I ever played. Willie being Willie had tried to sell Davy Conroy and Gordon Fraser, so he arranged a friendly with Ron Atkinson. I don't know if you remember that, against West Brom.
I definitely don't remember it because it was 15 years before I was born, but I am aware of it, yes.
Well, but he put that game on at Meadowbank, and I was playing centre mid that day, and I used to get flung out wide right. But Terry liked me playing wide right, and it was always just chalk on the boots, crosses to the front post, crosses to the back post, and like for some reason against them I got to play centre mid. I don't know if Mark Leeson was maybe in. He never liked playing the two of us together because we were just small players, and I think maybe Mark never played or somebody was out, so I got moved in. But I actually played against Remy Moses that day. We 2 years later went to bloody Man United for about $500,000, and I actually thought I had a great game and probably my best game at Meadowbank. So I got a bit of recognition for that day for people, the coaching team, and I got a run of games after that up to Christmas, and then we had played Aberdeen. We remember that game at Aberdeen in the League Cup. I didn't play in the home game, but I played at Pittodrie. I came on at half time. And it was the first time I'd probably ever played football where my instruction was when I went on, stop the right back for crossing the halfway line. That was my job. It was Stuart Kennedy, who was a Scottish internationalist. I think Terry had said to me, play wide left and just break his runs and don't let him run, because he was a flying machine. He went up and down the park. So that was my job in that match. But that was a game that, like, I don't think Jobby could have hit two better goals. It was just unbelievable to be playing a team that went on to win and beat Real Madrid a year later, and guys like Steve Archibald and Jobby's the best man on the park, rattling in 2 goals, and Fergie's giving them the kick in the door and the hairdryer treatment after the match. It was a bit surreal because till then we had played Hibs in the East of Scotland Shield. I think they beat us 3-1 at Easter Road. But we were actually close to them that day, and there were a new dimension, I think, to Meadowbank, that it was a younger, fitter side, and no the tag that they probably had for a couple of years, where, you know, they're basically an East of Scotland team that are now a senior team. So I think that period took that away and made them a more professional outfit in terms of, especially in terms of results, the Aberdeen result, and then after the new year when we drew Hibs and Georgie Best, and then taking them to a last minute and just losing by the 1 goal, and it was basically a set play. And the ironic thing was, it was Colin Campbell. We had the sports shop down the road for me that scored that goal, and then I had that chance. I had that chance in the last minute. I came on, and the thing is, I knew the guy. It was Ali Brazil, had played youth football with me, and he was playing right back for the Hibs. And they were just trying to play out time because he was 1-0. And I knew he was going to dink it back to the goalkeeper because he could pick it up in those days. But when he played it back, if he had played it along the ground, I probably would have been able to take it on the ground, go around the goalie and score. But he clipped it back, so it was about waist height. So I had to take it first time. And Jim MacArthur comes out and opens his cellar, it hits his shoulder, and it spins over the bar. It was my wee chance to get the club a lot of money, maybe get a wee day fame, but it didn't happen. I think Willie.
That's another home game that was not played at home, of course.
Yeah, that was the George Best effect. I mean, I think he played his first game against St Mirren, and there were 21,000 at St Mirren. So I mean, he was adding. Well, there was rumour that there was a George Best gate at Easter Road. You know, that, like, in the days he didn't declare the crowds, and but a turnstile, it was a Georgie Best turnstile, so we're led to believe. And because he must have put 5,000-6,000 on every single Hibs game. And again, I spoke to somebody recently, and there's a picture in a Fife barber shop of Bestie and Jobby shaking hands after the game. So Jobby's brother's a hairdresser in Dunfermline.
Very well known, the Jobson family.
Such a talented family. I mean, not just John and Richard. I mean, I reckon his dad was a bit a miner, but he was a poet. You know, he had, I think somebody was a priest or something, or, you know, he had, one was a painter. They were all like, they may be a really talented family. My link with Jobbie was he was a Celtic fan and I was a Celtic fan, so, and we liked the music. He introduced me to Simple Minds and took me to the Skids, and so he was a character. But it was a great season. I mean, as much as I was leaving at the end of the season, I enjoyed my season there. Mainly because of the people that played and the characters that were involved. So I left Meadowbank and I knew I was leaving 6 weeks before. Wally took me there, and I think Wally liked me. There were internal problems, I think, at the club, and I think Terry wanted to be the manager, and I think Wally was on his way out too. So it was just better for me to go. And in a football sense, I hated playing wide right in a 4-4-2 and just being like a winger, because I never had the best of pace, and I just felt it wasn't enjoyable. It was a job, you know, it was a task when you're on the pitch. I would rather just go and play, and I got a chance to go back to Hong Kong. And when Wally left, I didn't go then. I thought I'll just go play with the Strollers because I enjoyed that again. And I went down to the Strollers, and then I got told I couldn't play there because they were an amateur club and I'd came fifth. So I was in limbo a wee bit because my friends were all at the Strollers, and then I got a very lead and said, we'll take you, and if you want to go to America or anything comes up, you can go. We'll no hold you. And that time the beauty of playing in the east of Scotland was clubs done that, where if you signed for a junior club and maybe got some money for signing, you were their player, and they would keep you like a first or second division club would keep you, and you know, they wouldn't let you just leave and go. And so the east of Scotland, for guys that wanted to move about and maybe go back forward senior, was always probably a better place to be, because there's probably a lot of clubs like Newton Grange Star and teams like that that actually thought they were bigger than Meadowbank, and teams, you know, and potentially they probably got bigger crowds than Meadowbank.
Yeah, many people could successfully argue that they were.
And that's why I stayed in that sort of side playing. And then that was when Wally came in and asked me to go back to Hong Kong when he became an agent. And as I said, he went over first, and John Watson was there, winker, and Paul Roger was there, another guy I knew, played with the Heart.
John Watson was the legendary goal scorer at Dunfermline.
Yeah.
He joined Meadowbank halfway through that season, and it didn't quite work out for him. First, why do you think that was? And secondly, was he in your ear asking for advice before he went to Hong Kong?
No, he never. I don't know if it was just Willie trying to be Willie and get himself some players and just people that he also knew that were available. It was like that in the days. It was like, do you want to travel, son? Can you travel? Right, I'll give you this, or you'll get that. And then, I mean, it wasn't like now if you had YouTubes and you could check places out and find out things. It was just all by chance then. And even for Wally, it was by chance because he found out himself when he got there. You know, I remember like meeting him at the airport that second time I went, and John Watson was waiting on me arriving, and he said, "You have to go upstairs for a meal." Wally's sitting up there with the owner, and he says, "What to tell you? It's the same owner that was here the last time you were here." And Wally had promised me, it's new ownership now and that. When I went up the stair, the guy was sitting. Wally was like looking at me like nervously, and the guy said to me something like, "I hope you're going to behave this time, you know, when you're here." And I just looked at him, and he's sitting with a double brandy and half cut. I thought, here we go again. I'm not going to go through this again, chasing my wages every week. And I said, "Wally, can I have a word with you?"
And I suppose Willie's panicking because he's not going to get his cut if
Well,
you
that's
don't
what I
sign.
said. I said, "Wally, can I have a word with you?" And he went, "Listen, I'm going to be quiet." I said, "I've brought you over here. I've brought 3 others over here. I've paid my fare here. I'm in a hotel. I've not been paid yet." He says, "Tell them you'll sign till next week. Just stay till I get my money." I said to him, "Right, Wally, I'll stay a week and see what happens." Went back to the accommodation that they had for us and spoke to John and Paul. And they were saying, "Actually, the football's good and it'll be okay. This guy's going to leave." And I said to him, "No, I'm just going to get back to Scotland. I'm not going through all this month chasing wages and things." Anyway, in the morning I met Wally and he says to me, "I've got you another club. I've got you another club." He must have spoke to another club and got his compensation for me going over. Turns One, the club were called. Wally was happy and he got his cash.
How long did you stay over there?
6 months both times. No, it was just you just never knew what the next day was, really. But as a place, I loved the place, and I loved the fact that you could get up in the morning, it was nice and warm, and you could go and train, and you could enjoy playing football. There wasn't a lot of pressure on the football at that time too. It was still enjoyable. It wasn't like the demands that they would get in the Scottish higher leagues. And then I came back.
What had you been doing for work in Scotland? Or was it something you could just drop and disappear to Hong Kong for 6
I was
months?
actually quite lucky. I had a friend that had a wholesale flooring company in Edinburgh, and he was really good. He used to just let me come and go and slot me back into my job when I was in Scotland. So I was always grateful to that. If I would say, I'm right, I'm going away in April, usually wouldn't even fill my post till I came back in about October. And I done that with Toronto too. I went over to Toronto and played there, and came back. And I got the coaching bug there in Canada because it was newer there. It was like promoting football as well as playing. There were this big thing of going into schools and getting involved in coaching, and I actually began to enjoy coaching. And when I came back to Scotland from there, I was asked to sign with Clyde, with Craig Brown. A guy, Andy Worthington, took the civil service strollers team, and he was really into health, fitness and exercise. And he was partly with Craig Brown. I think it was through Jordan Hill, because he was a PE teacher, and I think he knew him through there. And we played Clyde at Shawfield, the old Shawfield, the strollers, and he said, you can play as a trialist and friendly, because I wasn't allowed to play for the strollers anymore because it was still then an amateur club. And we played Clyde, and I scored 2 goals, and Craig Brown came and asked me to sign for Clyde. And Pat Niven played that night, and that was the first time I thought, wow, this boy's just miles better than anybody on the park. You sometimes get that. In the second division, I remember speaking to Pat Stanton, and when I was playing at Meadowbank, and he asked me, who's the good players in the league? And I said, well, John Calhoun and Craig Levine are probably the 2 best players. Calhoun was at Stirling when we played them, and Levine was at Cowdenbeath, and they were real stickouts that went on to have great careers. And I think at that time when we were playing, there were still good players coming through from the second division, but I wanted to go into coaching. I didn't see the fact of going away up to places like Brecon and Montrose and working, and then I just thought, you know what, I'd rather work with kids and put something back into the game. That's what I started to do, just stop playing. And then really my reputation grew from there in terms of getting involved with the coaching.
You may know already that this is a not-for-profit project. Try saying that quickly. David and I don't stand to gain any financial benefit from any of the work we've put into the reunion, this podcast, or our forthcoming book. Any profits we do make will be donated to the Edinburgh Food Project, which operates 7 food banks and a money advice service in the capital. Last summer, we were able to present them with a cheque for £600 following the reunion event, and we'd love to keep raising money for them. Another opportunity is here. If you'd like to save money on your household bills, raise money for the Edinburgh Food Project, and get up to £150 for your trouble, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the episode description for a no-obligation household bill review with Hayley. You've got nothing to lose. Back to the show.
It was through people like Stevie Hancock and Ronnie Tolmie being Celtic players that led me to work for Celtic, because I had followed Celtic in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and they hadn't produced one player from the east of Scotland that made their first team. I remember Stevie as a kid. I watched Stevie when he played with St Anthony's School in the Scottish Cup final. I used to go up, they used to play just up the road for us at Arboretum. And Stevie and his brother Gavin played in St Anthony's, was my dad's school, and they won the Scottish Cup. And I always remember Stevie was a Celtic signing. And in my age group, Walter Kiddie Hearts was a Celtic signing, which a lot of people never knew that. And Ronnie Tolmie, who was a Scottish internationalist goalkeeper. But they were only 3 guys that I really knew that Celtic were interested in. So, and also me playing when I was a juvenile, every game you would see, like I mentioned, Aston Villa, Arsenal, teams from all over would be watching the players in the east of Scotland, and you very rarely seen a Celtic scout. So I had this meeting with Billy McNeil and said to him, look, I think there's talent in the east, and I think you're neglecting the talent in the east. And the big discussion went, we know the law of averages says the west of Scotland produced more players, it's twice the size. And then I counter-argued that, saying that, yeah, that was great when there were playing morning, noon and night, and kids played in schools, and they played in parks, and football was the be-all and end-all. And this was just late 80s, 88. This was late 80s. They were still playing, but not nearly as much. And I said to him, like, the best teams now are manufactured countries. This is when Celtic won European Cup, it was with the best teams were Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese, and that's a Latin flair that comes through in their natural ability. I said, but after the 70s, it became Ajax and Bayern Munich, and then the Scandinavians were growing. And I told him, I felt that they were manufactured players, and it was all through good coaching that the players were overtaking us in Scotland, and that really it was through good coaching that you produce players now, not like how Celtic produced a team with 10 men for Glasgow. So we decided to create a setup called Celtic East, and he said, right, that's the way you want to do, have them playing like the Celtic in the West, Celtic in the East, and see how it goes. And within 4 years, I had 2 players at 16-year-old make the first team. That was it really grew. The setup was big. I got a wee guy, Mark Anthony, that played at 16 for Celtic, and a guy, Pat Kelly, we again played at 16 for the Celtic. Unfortunately, Kelly signed for Newcastle. He left Celtic. He left with Shay Given. We went to Newcastle. Kenny Dalglish's son used to play in their under-18 team, and Kenny used to come and watch him, and he thought Kelly was a really good player, and he took him away to Newcastle when his apprenticeship was up. Like a lot of things in football, Big Pat got a bad back injury, and he wasn't playing by about 22. You know, he had to quit the game. So, but that was me up and running on the coaching bandwagon, and I loved that. And for me to be working at Celtic, I was going through, just then you would go through holiday time, school holiday times, and my remit was the East, so I'd done all the coaching in the East. But to go in there and sit and have your dinner with the Lisbon Lions and stuff like that, it was just a dream come true for me to be sitting having my dinner with Bobby Lennox and Bertie Auld, and just getting the characters and the story of these great people that played in football. And then after that, I went to Hearts, because you were there at Celtic for 5 years, but you were maybe getting 2 players through the first team, and the Hearts asked me to go to Hearts because they thought I could get more players through their system, you know, into full-time football. And when you think about that, that's what you're really in the game for, to try and do that. So I took the Hearts under-16s and left there, and we sort of revamped the youth policy for 11 onwards round about then, because teams weren't even going down as young as 11. I started bringing in laddies like Craig Gordon and Darren Fletcher, and players like that were all coming into the Hearts at 11. Gary O'Connor, we had lots of these lads all coming in, and the Hearts youth policy was really taken off. I got guys like Gary Naismith and the under-16 Scott Severin. We had a really good group. It's my bugbear about youth development in general. The Hearts management changed, and we had just won the Milk Cup in Northern Ireland, and it's the most premier tournament for youth players. I mean, they've all played on it. Joe Coles, to Rio Ferdinands, to David Beckham's. It's a major event, and we won it. The first time Hearts have ever won it. We beat the Russian national team in the final, and when the team came home, we had a change of manager, Tommy McLean, and he scrapped the team and put them all out to the juniors. And like, I was just like, my whole theory of building teams and learning them angles and teamwork just got all scrapped, and they all got put out to junior sides to toughen them up. And it was like taking a step back 20 years. So I'm still asked to stay and coach, but not take a team and just take the invites and things like that. I took a team to a tournament for Hearts just before the season started, and I'd never met Willie McStay, the Celtic, and we had a blether there, and he said, you fancy coming back to the Celtic? We heard good things about you. So I couldn't wait to get there again because of the change of management. Not because of Hearts, because Hearts were brilliant to work for, but just to get back working with a team and working with kids. So I went back to Celtic again. It was another redevelopment project in the East, and I worked with, it's quite funny, we would take them to tournaments and you look at the current coaching team, you've got Mark Fotheringham, he was one of the other kids at 11 and 12, Sean Maloney, Stephen McManus, all the ones that are now working with the players now, they were all our young kids coming through. Jamie Smith, Stephen Crania, and Mark Burchell was another one, Dan Fletcher, a great group. Again, I always stayed with a club till the 5-year circle was done. You know, we'd maybe take them in at 11 and I would work through with them until they went full time. And then I'd start again because I felt that I liked looking after them through the process till they got the chance to go full time. That was another cycle with Celtic. Would you believe another change of manager at Celtic, a complete change of policy at youth policy? They wanted to scrap the East set up and everybody had to go to Celtic Park 3 and 4 times a week. And I just thought that didn't work when kids from 12-year-old up to 15 going through to Glasgow 3 and 4 nights a week, knowing that only 1 or 2 was going to get beyond 18-year-old. And you've got parents giving up 4 years of their life, 4 nights a week, with the dream of their kid maybe going to sign for Celtic. And I just said it would. Plus the fact, try to pick up a kid at Trinent at 4:45 to get up to Celtic Park at 4:45 was very near impossible. So that was another move again. So I went back to Hearts again because they had changed their management. So I was back at Hearts for another 5 years. And that was my coaching career. And I had really good players there. A great squad, probably the best squad I ever had. That was with young David Gray and Andrew Driver, Callum Elliott, Jason Thompson. A lot of them went senior. We had about 6 in one group that I worked way through that all went first team. It was proven, I thought, that you could get players if you worked with them. When Tommy Burns was manager at Celtic, and this is what really annoys me, the whole youth development in Scotland. When Tommy Burns was manager, he wanted us to copy the Ajax way of producing players. It's no rocket science. I mean, what they have is specialists at 12, 13, 14, 15, they go full time at 16, but they're educated every year by the same people, and they've got them already at 16 and 18 to become full-time football players. And they've got all the knowledge, they've got all the agility, the ability, the tactical awareness. And between that age of 16 and 18, they're ready to play proper football. And when they're 18, Ajax wanted them in the first team and sold by 22. And that was a system. And if you look at that system against the Scottish system, so-and-so's the manager, his pal's now running the youth policy, so-and-so's leaving here and somebody else comes in and they want them to play the long ball instead of a passing game. That's what's up with Scottish football. There's just too many changes at the development level at too many times. That's why I feel we didn't progress in Scotland. I've done that for another 5 years, and then that was me thinking, I've done it for long enough now. I've done it for 20 years. It's time to step back and I couldn't take another 5-year cycle. I just quit. And I also didn't like the fact that they were going down to 9-year-old. I'm just not a believer of kids getting taught at 9-year-old they're not good enough to be a footballer. Because I was actually watching cartoons on the telly when I was 9. I wasn't. You get kids going along to Hibs and Hearts now, and they're saying, "Oh, Dad, I'm not to go back." I mean, what good's that for a kid's enjoyment?
Yeah, that's how football should be, about having fun.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Brian McClare's done a podcast recently. Brian McClare was high up in the SFA and he's worked with Man United and he's worked with Fergie. And Brian McClare said they should be going back to just playing for fun till the 14-year-old and then going into a senior club at 14. But right up to then, it should all be about playing with their pals, enjoying football, playing as much as you can, and no geeing, am I at Hibs or am I at Hearts or am I here? I thought, and there's a lot of sense in that because the game's
too much money at stake there, isn't there?
The game's stale now, and I go and watch Celtic B and I go and watch Hearts B, and the minute some players now cross the halfway line, they didn't know what to do. They want to go back and give it back to the goalkeeper, or they want to go back to the centre back, and this word "start again" that does my head in. When the right back gets the ball and they go "start again" and it goes to the centre half, to the left centre back, to the left back, and then it ends up back at the right back 3 minutes later. They're doing that far too much with young kids, and they're just not got any expression in the game anymore when they get into the other team's half. And it's the same with up front. I mean, Pep could play up front with one player when he was at Barcelona because he had Xavi and Iniesta and players like that behind Messi. But when you've got Berwick Rangers playing with one up front, and you're watching youth players playing with just one up front, you're thinking all the best teams that ever done well in English football played 4-4-2. And I'm not saying it's old school, but the strikers worked as partnerships, the wingers worked with strikers, and the whole flow of a team was so much better than how they're playing now, 4-5-1. I mean, when I was at Hearts, I played 3 systems in that, because it was 3 periods when you played youth development and development league. There's no points. So I played 3-4-3 for period 1, 4-3-3 for period 2, and 3-5-2 for period 3. And mainly just to learn kids 3 different styles of football to play so that they're prepared for playing when they're a wee bit older. I had one manager that managed Scotland tell me that from 11-year-old, every team will play 4-4-2 now because that's how the first team play. And I just thought, is that really development? The kids, play a 4-4-2 system at 11-year-old. I mean, how many 11-year-olds will still be at, say, Hearts when they're 16? So that was a bit disillusioned with football. And then people say to me now, oh, Hugh, you couldn't go back to it. Kids are soft because, they didn't work nearly as hard as we did when we were players. And even, to be fair, when I was at Meadowbank, training was really intense and hard. I mean, we had good facilities. We had the running track at Meadowbank, and we'd do 400 runs, and that big stand. You'd go over the stand to build your quads and calves. You'd run up and down the steps. They're all things that they probably don't even do in football now. If nothing else, it was character builder. A lot of character have been taken away from football. It's quite a soft game now. Players are running about.
You certainly can't run up and down the stand at Meadowbank anymore.
Oh, I know. I was at a wee youth game last Sunday, and I went on the park, and it's a lovely surface. I mean, there's no shot puts on it now, and there's no javelins going on it. But I looked at the stand, and I looked at the wee wall, and it's like, it's actually, and when you see
Quite silly.
you see the size of it, how far it is for the park, and then now because behind one of the goals is completely bare, it's not even got the wee wooden seats round it. The day I was there, the wind was just howling right down it, and I bet you it's not a great place to play in the winter. I mean, it was always a pretty soulless place to play at the best of times. I think if you were asked me personally, I think the venue where Meadowbank played kept them back more than anything as a club. I liked the playing surface when it was in good nick. I liked the size of the pitch. I liked there were no crowd, and it was, you'd look up at that big stand and it'd be quite empty if it was December, or it would be freezing cold for people to watch it. I think it was just a shame if that group that Wally had and that group over the next 5 years that, say, Terry had, if they were playing at their own wee venue somewhere in Edinburgh like Spartans now have, the club might have grew. It might have stayed Meadowbank. I go round and support. I go to see Celtic and whenever the home. But if Celtic are playing a Sunday, I go up to Spartans on a Saturday and support my local team. The crowds are growing. There were a time I didn't think it would have happened. I thought Spartans are just maybe not going to get there, into the league and the pyramid system. When they did get there, I thought, can they sustain it with crowd-wise? And it shows you that they have done it. Edinburgh City's no really done it.
Well, I mean, obviously before I was born, but people always, I'm told, used to say that Edinburgh's not big enough for 3 clubs. There's only room for Hearts and Hibs. And then last season, you've got Edinburgh City, Bonnyrigg and Spartans all in the league. It just goes to show that if the resources are put in the right place, then it's entirely possible.
Spartans played Hearts and big crowds, and I've seen them play like Mortons and teams like that, travelling support, and they got a cup tie. I mean, there's a great wee atmosphere at Spartans at some games, and it's a community club now, and they've got a lot of teams, and I think Meadowbank never ever had that. I mean, I don't think we never had a reserve team, did we? They had nothing. They just had a squad. So I know it's all down to the SFA now, but there were really no development plans at the time that I played. That probably held the club back too, in terms of getting younger players through. But they were a likeable club. There's no doubt about that. I think the people in Edinburgh liked Meadowbank Thistle, and I think they wanted them to do well. I don't think they wanted to go and watch them, which is
That's it. I've said this recently at church. There are so many people who would be sad and would complain if the church closed down but they also would never go to church. It's a societal problem, isn't it? And it just goes to show that it's not a 2026 problem. How would you like your football career to be remembered? Now, I've not asked this question before, and I think it's quite poignant because a lot of people will turn around and say, well, I only played part-time for Meadowbank Thistle. Why would it be remembered? But actually, I think you've seen on social media in the last few days, since I publicised that you were going to be on, that people do remember. And actually, people have really fond memories of you guys playing. So how would you like to be remembered?
Well, there's one thing I would like to be remembered for. Is I took a bit of pride in playing for Meadowbank Thistle, and I appreciated the people that supported Meadowbank, because I was one of the few people that, when they did go and play away from home, and the days where you could go round the bus and say who's wanting their tickets, I would get off the bus and look for the guys that followed Meadowbank and say, there's 10 tickets for the guys to get into away games. So, I mean, I would like to be remembered as somebody that played for Meadowbank and enjoyed playing for Meadowbank. I'm not going to want to be remembered as somebody who was successful at Meadowbank, because I was only there a season. But I learned from playing at Meadowbank. I learned things about how to coach and what I thought was good and what I thought wasn't good at Meadowbank. I've got memories of playing against Aberdeen and George Best as a Meadowbank player. So, and even personal memories playing against Remy Moses and thinking I'd done really well against him, and thought, well, that guy went on to Manchester United. If somebody else maybe thought I was a better player, I've been through all that as a coach. I've seen me going to the head of youth development and saying, you're going to sign this laddie because he's a good player. And them come back and say, is he going to be 6 feet? You know, I mean, I had that with Lee Wallace at Hearts. He ended up captain of Rangers. And I was saying to people, you're going to sign this boy, he's a really good player. And I kept on getting, is he going to grow? Is he going to grow? Is he going to be big? And he ends up 6'2" and he's playing for Rangers and plays for Scotland. And you think, you know, that's a memory that I'll stick by. The bad side of me at Meadowbank is sometimes you were judged as, oh, he's too weak. You know, or we've got too many wee players. So when I went on to coach, I always judged kids on their ability and their application as against their physique. And I feel that was a thing I learnt at Meadowbank. And sometimes it's the same at all clubs. If you're not playing, you're sometimes forgotten about. You know, from within, you know, like if you're injured or something, you're just not part of the 16 or part of the 14. I felt that could have been done better at Meadowbank with people. I used that as a thing that motivated me when I went into coaching, and always made everybody feel involved, and probably always be honest with people, tell them the truth, rather than, I felt that although there were great things going on at Meadowbank, there were a lot of things in the background that were probably affecting me and other players. Because there were other players at Meadowbank that season very rarely got a kick in the ball. And like Brian Ross was a classic example. Brian was a Scottish international and a Hibs player, and technically a great player. Didn't play very much because he was like me. He was probably even smaller than me. So you couldn't have too many of us on the pitch at that time, because the second division was quite a physical approach to the game and set plays to the game and a lot of aerial stuff, and that's sometimes dictated who played and who didn't play, and so just got to accept that. It's the same in any walk of football. If somebody might like you and somebody might not like you, you got one coach that thinks you're the best player in the world. You got another coach that doesn't fancy you, and that's the. I was just doing that Celtic podcast on Saturday, and I was asked that question: is there any player that you think should have made it that didn't make it from within your setup? And I just said, one player in particular. Some people never had the belief in him that I had, and maybe if I would have worked longer with him, he might have went on to do the same as Darren Fletcher. At 15, they were of equals. So that's football, how it is. But I've got no regrets about anything at Meadowbank. I enjoyed my time there, really. It was a great wee club, and it's nice looking back now that they're no there, that you could actually think even more about playing for them, because it's a club that wasn't there. And what things that you're trying to do now is recreate the memories of Meadowbank. It's good, because the book that I've just wrote is exactly the same theme. My housing scheme in my area has totally changed 50 and 60 years ago. Like when I was brought up in the 60s and 70s, all the things that I loved and enjoyed are all gone. And people in my scheme now didn't even know they were there. From cinemas to schools to boys' clubs to so many things like industry, fishing fleets, everything. The whole dimensions of going to schools changed. Like when I left school at 15, I could have went to 4 factories in a mile radius and got any trade that you wanted to get, which could take you over the world. And the strange thing is, I've just got a wee heat chat where the book's been selling, and like there's people in Alaska bought the book, and people in Thailand and all over America and Canada and Australia, quite a few in Australia. And I would say it's ex people from North Edinburgh and Granton that are of a certain age that got a trade and went and travelled the world through that trade and are now living in all over the world. And that's what football does too. And I was one that was quite happy to go and try that and do that by going to Canada and going to Hong Kong and not being fair to go and enjoy that side of life. And as a coach, it made me better because I was working with Portuguese people in Toronto and Hamilton, Italian people, South American people, and you pick up all these wee elements of coaching, all different things about football. And I really think that helped make me a better coach when I came and coached at clubs like Celtic and Hearts.
Brilliant. So tell us what the book is called and set the scene.
There we go. The old team. The old team.
So there'll be links and all that to where people can find it in the description of the podcast.
It's available on Amazon Books and Waterstone Books. These are both online. Toppin and Co, the bookshop in Edinburgh. Kindle.
What's it about?
The story. It's when their old mate Crookie dies, the old team lads from Granton reunite, sparking memories of school, football, the buzz of the 60s and 70s, of life in North Edinburgh. And these guys are hardened by the social and economic fallout that hit working class Scotland throughout the 80s and 90s. But they've held tight to loyalty, graft, and a wee code of honour, and they've decided it's time to take justice into their own hands. So basically, somebody dies from a group of guys that were at school together, and they're on those 60s and getting ready to retire, and they all reunite back in Edinburgh for this one person's funeral. And then that sparks memories of the 60s and 70s and how their lives have all went in different directions, and it's brought them all back together. But they're all still sort of pillars of their community and in some sort of way, but the area's changed, no for the better, i.e. in the opposite of Irvine Welsh's train spotting view of Edinburgh where it's drug ridden, and these guys weren't brought up in that 90s and 80s, they were brought up in the 60s and 70s, which was skinheads and gang culture and things like that, but they weren't drug takers and they're anti-drugs, and they've been brought together at 60 and there's problems in the scheme with drugs while they're at this funeral, and there's kids running about, shoplifting and playing on bikes and being disruptive to older people in the community, and that's where the revenge comes out and the vigilante thing comes in. These guys take the law into their own hand. Basically, that's the story. So it's a fictional story, but the football content and the social Edinburgh content's real, and I use the history of like Meadowbank involvement, the Hearts and Hibs involvement, and what these teams have achieved as clubs, and I think it sells Edinburgh as a city too, as a sporting city, because sometimes it's overlooked by the Old Firm derby matches, and people out with Edinburgh maybe didn't know the importance of a Hibs Hearts match, and you know how the city love their teams in different ways. That's what it was trying to be. And I also done it basically because I worked in the fitness industry for 20 years. And when you get COVID and you can't go outside, I was like on a glass arse, sorry, but I was stuck in the house and it was just driving me up the wall. So I started to just not doing all these things about life and football, and then all of a sudden it come together, and I thought, my mum was ill and she was terminally ill, so I started just chatting to her about life and her life too, and I used to read wee chapters to her, and she said, I want you to publish that. That's my wish. And I sat on it for 2 years or so, and then I found it hard to get a publisher, and I found it hard to self-publish because it was expensive, actually, much more expensive than people make out, once you get the editors and formatters. And then I got in tow with a guy that had worked with the fitness industry and helped him recover from a bad injury that he had. He lost both his legs, and he was quite a young guy at the time, and he went into writing just because it was an avenue that he could be successful at. And he wrote a couple of books, and I kept in touch with him through the years. And then I says, go and read this story and see what you think. And he helped me get it published just over the last few months. So me doing him a nice favour in terms of looking after him and his health, he done me a big favour. He got me a good published deal and stuff like that. So that's up and running, and it's done really well. I'm really pleased. And I think the good thing is it's rekindling old memories for age groups. And all I really ever wanted it to be is go in my school library and be a history local Edinburgh and Granton area, because the area's changing, and very soon in the area, most people in the area will not even know anything about the history of the place. And that's just it's done mainly as a reminder that it was once a great part of Edinburgh to be raised. And we had the people like Strachan. I played against Gordon Strachan, and I mentioned Gordon Strachan. I used Darren Jackson in Meadowbank as a classic example to every kid that wants to be a footballer. Darren was a skinny wee laddie that was deemed no good enough, played under 21, Melbourne Thistle, got a chance to play for Meadowbank Thistle, got his move to Newcastle United, played at Hibs and Hearts, and played for Scotland in an opening game in the World Cup. You can't get any bigger dream or story for a kid to follow. And I sometimes use Darren's pathway when I was speaking to younger kids that think they're going to be overlooked by a club or they're not going to get a club, and say, look, this is what happened to Darren.
Yeah, Aaron came on this podcast, said he was stood next to Ronaldo in the tunnel. Thought, wow, I came here from Meadowbank Thistle.
Yeah, and that's what it's really all about, and that's what's probably a shame about Meadowbank no being there, that the fact that the club could do that for somebody like Darren, give him that shop at window to be a player. It's funny with Darren's dad, Addy was a character, and he always wanted me to play for his boys' club team. I didn't really know Darren. I still don't really know Darren because we never class. It's a different age bracket. But I used to play against his dad's team, Addy, and Addy was a great character. And I remember even latterly he was taking the school team at Warriston, and he always would argue with referees, and but he loved the game. He was just a real football man. And I've mentioned Addy in the book because I wanted to mention characters like Addy that are long gone, will never be forgotten, because they were true football men and football was their life. And again, probably through Addy, that's why Darren went on to do so well. So it was a thank you to all the volunteers too that put so much time and effort into people like myself when we were kids, and gave us the opportunity to go and see the world and be able to put us on a pathway to good. That's what the book's about.
Brilliant. Thank you. Before we finish, can you tell me any more stories about Willie McFarlane?
Well,
because everybody says that he's this massive character and there's all these stories and then they can never deliver.
Because Willie would probably be the master at allowing him to see them deliver. I mean, my thing with Willie is I always found it funny that when he got on the bus for the games, when he got picked up at the bookies, I used to look at him sometimes and think, his mind's not on the game. His mind's on how many bets are going on in his shop and how he can lay off other bets. Because my dad was a bookie too, and I knew how it worked, and I knew how, if somebody comes in and puts £100 on Stirling to beat Meadowbank, well, he's going to have to put £70 on Stirling to beat Meadowbank so he doesn't lose, a lot of money. There's times I used to think when he got on the bus, his mind was more on the bookies and the betting than it was until he got to the place to pick his team. I thought he was good. He tried to play in games and all that, the training and that, and he still thought he had a good left peg. But I mean, he couldn't run by then. I just found him a character. I found him quite a likeable guy. He was just, to me, he was a larger than life character. He was probably, if I was to describe him, I would say Willie was similar to Ali McLeod. Ali McLeod, the Scotland manager. That's how I would see Willie, as a 50s version. He probably played with Alan McLeod in the Hibs. As you say, there's nothing you could really say about him. I would always say he always had a wee slant on something for himself in terms of like trying to fix up a game to sell Puskas and David Conroy. You could just picture him sitting with Big Ron saying, these guys are players.
The other one is that Willie had money against Meadowbank on a game at Bury. Brechin.
Right.
And they won, and he was absolutely livid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That wouldn't these kind of things wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't think he would ever pick a team to lose, but because I think he liked winning. He was a betting man. But I don't know even how it came to end for him. I just knew he was gone, and then the next thing that he was agent work, and that's when he got next in touch with me.
Was he ever trying to fix you up to go somewhere else?
Just Hong Kong, that was it. But then you didn't really have agents. He was an agent, but not a proper agent. He never got. I mean, he would get money for the club, but he would just recruit them players.
More of a fixer.
Pardon?
More of a fixer than an agent.
In my second period going back, I don't think he made anything off it. I think he got a fright when he went there because I think he maybe thought he could. But they're sharks. You can't, when you're sitting over there and they're all speaking in Cantonese, and I mean, that would be really out of his depth there. And the night that we were in that airport lounge, he certainly was out of his depth that night. He was really panicking to get his money back he had put out up front to take players over to Hong Kong. And I just never heard from him for a year and a half or so, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, do you want to go back to Hong Kong? See, in the days, they probably got asked, can you get us 6 players? And he would just go through his book and go, right, who's available or who's... Then if you actually were prepared to travel, you probably had a chance to go and play, because like, when I played at Hong Kong, see the amount of teams for Australia that asked me to go to Australia, actually from Hong Kong, after I was playing there. I mean, that was probably a done thing then. Some people played in Hong Kong, and then when the season finished, went over to Australia and played there, and that happened. And it was the same with America. They used to have the indoor football. As soon as the outdoor football finished in, say, October, they had an indoor league for a period, and you could go and play in the indoor league. And if teams knew you were prepared to, like what you asked me about, what did I do work-wise, and I was flexible. I could come and go and get a job back. But I mean, that has to come to an end sometime. And when you get the coaching and you know it's only going to be part-time, I mean, I got an HND in health, fitness and exercise just to then continue and have a fitness career as well as part-time coach, because the two blended in brilliantly for me. And that's enjoyed that too. And it kept me fit.
Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Hugh McGauran. You can pick up a copy of The Old Team in Waterstones and on Amazon. There's a link in the episode description for that. Next time, we have John McCormack in the hot seat, and also in the pipeline is Alan Banks. I'll also be interviewing Terry Christie very soon, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for those. You can pick up regular On This Day Meadowbank moments over on X at Meadowbank This, and I will soon be creating a mailing list over the summer as we get into the meat of the project, so I can keep you all updated. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me via social media or email meadowbankthis@gmail.com. This is the Meadowbank Thistle Podcast. I'm Morgan Knock. Until next time, it's goodbye.